The House of Representatives will vote Wednesday, November 12th, on a funding package to end the longest federal government shutdown in U.S. history. The measure is expected to pass and then go to the desk of President Donald Trump, who has said he will approve it. A small group of Democrats in the Senate announced Sunday night they had negotiated an agreement with Republicans and the White House to resolve the funding crisis. The deal is very good, the president said Monday. If lawmakers manage to sidestep widespread flight disruptions and returning to Washington, they'll take the penultimate step in moving past a political mess that has lasted for more than a month and left millions of Americans unable to afford food, travel, and rely on countless government services. The history-making debacle has bitterly divided Washington and congressional Democrats in particular. In a concession from the GOP, the latest deal would reverse Trump's recent layoffs of thousands of federal workers amid the shutdown, but it would not extend expiring Affordable Care Act subsidies as Democrats had demanded for weeks. Instead, the bill only guarantees a standalone vote on the health care subsidies in December before the credits expire at the end of the year and send health care premiums skyrocketing. It's unclear if enough Republicans support extending the funds for the effort to pass in the Senate, and Speaker Mike Johnson has not committed to holding a vote in the House. How much could the shutdown end up costing? Despite movement in Congress, the federal government remains largely closed for business. While cost estimates from the Congressional Budget Office, CBO, are still just that, estimates, the nonpartisan group can offer an early look into how much the impasse may end up costing the country. Though shutdowns have historically not had major lasting impacts on the economy, risk of adverse effects grows the longer a shutdown drags on. This one is the longest in U.S. history. In an October 29th report, the CBO projected the nation's real GDP could see a 1.5% drop by November 12th as a result of the shutdown. While most of the decline in real GDP will be recovered eventually, the report says, as of today's 6-week mark, it estimates $11 billion may be permanently lost. Who are the Senate Democrats who voted with the GOP on the deal? 8 Democratic senators broke from their ranks and joined with Republicans to vote for a deal to reopen the government on November 9th. The move infuriated many other Democratic caucus members. The group consists largely of moderate Democrats, and none of the 8 are running for re-election in 2026. They include 4 former governors and 2 senators who have announced they're retiring when their term ends, and an independent who caucuses with Democrats. They are Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, Democrat Nevada, Senator Jackie Rosen, Democrat Nevada, Senator Dick Durbin, Democrat Illinois, Senator John Fetterman, Democrat Pennsylvania, Senator Maggie Hassan, Democrat New Hampshire, Senator Jeanne Shaheen, New Hampshire, Tim Kaine, Democrat Virginia, and Angus King, Independent Maine. Flight delays, cancellations persist ahead of House vote. Within the past week, air travel was thrown into disarray after the Federal Aviation Administration began cutting down on flights to manage the effects of more than a month of air traffic control staffing issues exacerbated by the shutdown. Though lawmakers are working on a deal to reopen the government, it's not likely these flight disruptions will end immediately. Experts and airlines have cautioned that travelers should prepare for further flight disruptions throughout the week. As it stands, the FAA is expected to increase flight cuts to 8% on November 13th and to 10% on November 14th. As of Wednesday morning, FlightAware data showed more than 880 cancellations and over 650 delays for flights within, into, or out of the United States. Flight disruptions slightly eased up yesterday, November 11th, with 1,264 cancellations after Monday. November 10th saw over 2,400 cancellations. What happened to SNAP benefits? The nation's leading food aid program, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, has been caught in a series of legal challenges and funding disruptions over the last few weeks due to the congressional impasse. For the first time in the food stamp program's 60-year history, funding lapsed on November 1st, launching a scramble to try to keep benefits going for the 42 million Americans who depend on them. A few days before the lapse, the U.S. Department of Agriculture said it couldn't use $6 billion of contingency funds to pay for SNAP, although the agency has used it in at least 2 previous shutdowns. That was challenged in courts, and a series of back and forth between the agency and court orders has further confused and frustrated Americans who need the benefits. The latest move came on November 11th, when the Supreme Court declined to order the administration to fully fund the food benefits, giving Congress time to settle the matter. When did the shutdown begin? The federal government shutdown began just after midnight on October 1st, after Democrats and Republicans came to loggerheads over the extension of expiring health care subsidies for millions of Americans. It became the longest shutdown in U.S. history on November 5th, bypassing the last one in 2019, which occurred during Trump's first administration. That one lasted 35 days and cost the economy about $3 billion, or 0.02% of GDP, according to the Congressional Budget Office. House Democratic leaders urged no vote on bill to reopen government. House Democratic leaders urged their colleagues to vote against the Senate legislation to reopen the government because of the lack of additional health care funding that lawmakers warn could leave millions without health insurance. Most Democrats in the House and Senate have opposed temporary funding measures to keep the government open. Democrats demanded a restoration of spending cuts to Medicaid and an extension of subsidies set to expire December 31st under the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. But 8 senators who caucus with Democrats joined Republicans in approving the bill in the Senate. The bill cleared a key hurdle overnight when the House Rules Committee agreed to rules on how the bill will be debated November 12th. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat New York, joined others in proposing an amendment to extend Obamacare subsidies for 3 years, but the proposal failed. House Minority Whip Katherine Clark, Democrat Massachusetts, sent out a message to colleagues recommending a no vote on the bill. This does not have to happen to the American people. This is a choice, Clark told the Rules Committee. Democrats have been presenting off-ramps all year. We've been giving you a chance to reverse course day after day. Poll. Many Americans want Democrats to hold firm on shutdown. A new survey found that 41% of Americans believe Democrats shouldn't vote to fund the government unless the legislation includes the health care changes they've been demanding. The Economist/YouGov poll of U.S. adults released November 11th comes as 8 members of the Democratic caucus in the Senate voted with Republicans on legislation to reopen the government. The House is expected to vote today on the bill, which doesn't include an extension of health care subsidies that are set to expire at the end of the year. Democrats for weeks fought to include an extension of the Affordable Care Act premium subsidies in government funding legislation, and many on the left have criticized the compromise funding bill as insufficient without the extension. The survey also found that 36% of Americans blame Republicans in Congress more for the shutdown, compared to 34% who blame Democrats more and 24% who blame both equally. Duffy urges House to act and vote to end the government shutdown. During a news conference Tuesday in Chicago, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy urged the House to follow the Senate and vote to end the shutdown. If the House doesn't act and the government remains shuttered, Duffy warned of dire consequences for the nation's air traffic system. Some airlines, he said, may choose to ground their fleets. If the House doesn't act, I think we'll see more than 10% disruption and possibly airlines grounding planes altogether, Duffy said at a news conference at O'Hare International Airport. That's how serious this is. If the House doesn't pass this bill, I think you're going to look at Saturday, Sunday, and Monday as tiddlywinks, he later added. It was beautiful. It's going to get much worse than that. Congressmen opt for carpooling, motorcycling to make it in time for vote. One Republican congressman was so concerned about flight delays that he opted to drive his motorcycle roughly 950 miles back to the nation's capital instead of braving an airport. Representative Derek Van Orden left his home state of Wisconsin on Monday night to make the approximately 15-hour voyage through freezing temperatures. You may ask, Derek, why are you on a Harley-Davidson when it's 32 degrees outside? He said in a video posted on social media from somewhere along the Mississippi River. Because they shut down the government. The Democrats' flights are too unreliable.